Hey everyone, Zandrous here, and welcome to the spoiler section for Star Trek Beyond. So I'm not gonna pussyfoot around. If you want to see the first part, go over here and click the icon. Go watch that first and come back here, or don't if you don't want to spoil, or at least come back here after the movie's done. You go and see it, you come back here. I recommended it, go watch it. But if you're staying here, you're around for the spoilers, so here's your spoiler warning if you didn't get it already. Let's dive in. Alright, one of the problems I had with this movie, going a little more in depth here, I want to get the bad out of the way, and that is Krall's whole plot. Krall as the villain is an alien, but he's not an alien. He's in fact the captain of a long-lost ship, the USS Franklin, and it was an old NX prototype kind of thing, like the Enterprise NX was for Enterprise. It was a early design ship, and they were lost. God, several decades ago, if I remember correctly. And anyway, he is the captain of that ship. I think he's like 100 years old, and he had found this ancient technology that was on the planet they had crashed on. And he figured out how to use it, him and the crew that were there. And using this technology, they were able to prolong their lives, and it kind of transformed them into these weird aliens, I guess. Basically what they do is they were able to start absorbing life force energy from other people, siphoning off all of that into themselves, and that's how he could prolong his own life and the life of the crew that was left over, I guess. And when he absorbs people, it changes him, physically, it changes him. And I guess this alien technology involved the hive mind ships, where he could telepathically link all of them together to create this massive wave of ships. That's kind of like an ocean of nanotechnology through space kind of thing. That's what it looks like. It's kind of weird because you really don't get to hear much about this ancient group. And then the whole thing is him trying to find these two pieces for this bioweapon from this ancient race that they had separated and then launched out into space to never see again, that somehow people had found. And he wanted to get them back together, and it creates this kind of gaseous cloud. It's a nanotech cloud kind of thing that basically gets to and then eats away a person and completely destroys the body. It's just not really a really original thing when it comes to this plot. I wasn't a fan of it because it just seems so small scale. So it's just basically I've got a flesh-eating bioweapon that completely just eats away and disintegrates the body. That's it. And he wants to use it on the starbase, and then I guess spread it out from there to go destroy other planets and that. And he wants to, hit a big blow to the Federation because of the way the Federation forgot him, because he and his ship and his crew were lost. He had no idea where to find them, and he was from the wars. So the war with the Xindi and the war with the Romulans. So we're talking pre-TOS stuff, and then during the Enterprise timeline and onward to now. So, it's one of those stories of the warrior not being able to survive in a peacetime kind of thing. And so he's turning his back on the Federation because he was a warrior and they put him on the starship. And the human race is only strong because we thrive and survive through all this stuff and adversity and fighting for everything. Peace makes us weak kind of thing. It was kind of unoriginal. It was kind of overdone. It didn't help the character. The twist wasn't too bad overall about him being the former captain from the lost ship. And they kind of wanted the backstory a little bit when they find it. It starts adding a little bit to the mystery. So I didn't hate everything about the character's connection with Franklin and Starfleet and him being human and then transformed by this technology. It's just that the old warrior story and the bio weapons thing it's kind of overdone in sci-fi in a lot of ways. And I would have liked something different, a little stronger. Like I talked about before, I really could not get into the whole thing with Jayla's story with the one like bad guy under Crawl's command. But yeah, Manus and Jayla's history is Jayla was one of the people that was brought down by Crawl. Lured them here, crashed them, and then captured the crew, and then ended up killing the crew to prolong his life. And she was one of them. She was younger, and her father, planned a breakout. And during the breakout, Manus finds them, and her dad stays behind to fight them, and ends up dying. She's the one that ended up escaping in the end. So she's dealing with her own fear of Manus and going back to that camp, where everyone's being kept prisoner from the crew. So while I kind of appreciated that kind of development for her character, it was just kind of tacked on. It felt like maybe if they'd addressed it earlier, introduced us to Manus properly beforehand, and developed it throughout the second act into the third act, it'd have been different. But overall, we could have dropped that whole plot. It would not have made a difference. It wouldn't have hurt Jayla's character, and frankly, we could have just had a good fight between these two actors. It's him just being one of the people. He was just kind of strong. It's just, I don't know. It felt like something that could have been cut completely. That's just my opinion. Now, as I mentioned in the first part of this, the CG work is fantastic, except for one part. So on the Franklin, after they're getting ready together to plan the breakout, there's a motorcycle that is on the Franklin, and they need a distraction, so the plan is to use Kirk on the bike as a distraction, and Jayla's going to go with them. So they teleport the bike to the location as it's going, and it looks so bad. It just doesn't match the scenery. It's green screened. I don't know if it's CG or green screened on or whatever. It looks bad. It also doesn't make sense because the transport they're using is cargo transport. And I'm trying to figure out how they got the momentum to go in this small chamber area during a teleportation so that when it does actually transport, it's already in motion. It just doesn't make sense. So it's a bit of a logical inconsistency with how was it already going at the momentum so it doesn't just, when it materializes. And then it just doesn't look nice at all. It was the one time that the CG work failed. However they did it, it didn't come out right. So another thing that I found kind of lacking was one of the big reveals. Now, I mentioned earlier that the whole stress thing that happened, there was somebody that was that kind of said their ship was taken, and they needed help. Well, she ends up to be working for Crawl, and you're waiting for it. It's kind of obvious. It's too suspicious. You're sitting there watching, and Kirk kind of suspects it from time to time. Then everything goes to shit. He really suspects it, and she's still there, and she's trying to get the other piece. I don't know. She wasn't bad, just it was just too obvious for me, because I was sitting here just kind of waiting for her to turn. I'm waiting for it. She's involved. The whole Panther crew's a lie, and it happened. She did go out, in a really cool way. They flipped the saucer section on top of her, so that was at least amusing. But it was too obvious of a plot point for me, so I didn't really care as much when she was on screen because I knew she was going to betray them anyway. So now that we got kind of the things I didn't like and kind of dragged down the movie out of the way, let's talk about the great things in this movie. And there's a good amount of great things. Chris Pine's Kirk dealing with his his own issues with his father's death, his place at Starfleet. And the kind of mundane, repetitive nature of, the deep space 5-year mission finally starts getting to him, and he decides that he, wants to apply for a vice admiral position at the starbase that they go to. and he has to deal with, you know, all that, while he's also dealing with his ship being destroyed, his crew scattered. So he's got all those emotions and all those, you know, things running through his mind about where he needs to be and comparing himself to his father and all this other stuff. And in the end, it culminates with him rejecting the vice admiral position that he earned. Like, he completely earned it. And he decides that he wants to go back out there. He's rediscovered what it is for him to be on a starship. It's the adventure, it's the discovery, and he doesn't want to miss it. So it's that explorer's itch. And I think they handled that, you know, pretty nicely, because, you know, he's got to deal with the whole thing with the birthday thing again, similar to Wrath of Khan, where it's Kirk's birthday, and dealing with, you know, getting older and your place and things. So it was an interesting bit of a retread, but not done in a bad way. You know, it didn't suffer like, you know, Into Darkness did with a lot of the retreading they did with, you know, Khan and everything. It worked well in this. It didn't deal with his age as much as just, you know, his own personal sense of, you know, self-worth. And I think that was a good amount of development that, you know, Kirk needed, because he's kind of past the whole, you know, philandering, you know, sleeping around with women all the time and everything. He's not that Kirk. He's a more mature Kirk. He's an adventurer, but he's just kind of feeling run down, feeling kind of confined and undefined. It was an interesting wrinkle to the character that they added. And then we have Spock, and Quinto's Spock. I have enjoyed it since the beginning, and this whole thing with dealing with the future of Vulcan, where he feels it's his duty to help repopulate the Vulcan species, and that causes some conflict with him and Uhura. And I don't know if that was, it's not really explicitly stated, maybe that he wanted children and maybe she didn't, or if it was he was trying to push her into having children, or if it was he was thinking maybe he needed to be with another Vulcan, a pure blood Vulcan, and that caused things. And they kind of break up at the beginning of the movie with the first act, and they don't really explicitly say anything. And it's open to a bit of interpretation a little bit, and I kind of like that ambiguity, because it leaves you guessing a little bit what exactly is meant. At least that's how I read it. Maybe there was context than this, but it was interesting to look at that mindset in Spock. You know, dealing with the death of his mother, the destruction of his own planet, the scattering of the species, and he's dealing with his own mortality with the death of Ambassador Spock, which is, you know, his future self from an alternate timeline. And, you know, he's seen the kind of stuff that Ambassador Spock dealt with, and how he lived his life, the things he did, the healing he tried to do, and the good he did. And he's also trying to deal with living up to that, much like Kirk is trying to deal with living up to his father. And you have an interesting kind of parallel with these characters on that. And then Spock dealing with his own mortality. He gets injured in the movie, where he's nearly, you know, gets his heart punctured by shrapnel, and he's bleeding internally, and he's weakened for a little while. He gets pretty near death at some points, and it gets to the point where he even kind of lets go of, you know, holding back his emotions, and you see him laugh, enjoy things. In fact, it gets really amusing when him and McCoy are sitting in this kind of ancient hut-looking thing, and he's sitting here with the shrapnel, you know, it's finally gone, but he's still, like, bleeding a bit. There's internal bleeding, he's injured. And they're just kind of sitting there chatting, and they kind of get to laughing. And McCoy just goes, "Oh my God, you're delusional." I couldn't help it. That was just so great of a moment there, because they had a moment. And that's the thing, there's a lot of moments for these characters in this movie. And it just did such a great job in building the dynamics with everybody. And my God, Carl Urban. Congratulations, you are on par with DeForest Kelly and making Bones your own. You fit so well with this character. It is scary at times. You had a lot of the best lines in this movie, a lot of the best reactions, whether it was about flying the ship and hitting things because you couldn't fly it right, whether it was, just your banter with Spock, whether it was your banter with Kirk, or anything. Just fantastic. Favorite part of the movie, actually the favorite part of almost every one of these movies has been when Carl Urban's Bones is on screen with either Spock or Kirk. I always enjoy those. I have not seen one scene, I don't think, if I can remember everything, there's not been one scene that fell flat due to your acting. It's like some of the stuff kind of fell flat for writing. Into Darkness was where I'm looking at that for. But overall, the acting has been spot on. And yeah, Bones is one of my favorite characters in this series for sure. And especially in this timeline. I can't get enough. So yeah, I just can't help it. I smile whenever I think about his bones. It's great. That sounds so horrible. I guess the only other spoiler I can really think of was after the destruction of the Enterprise and they get back to the starbase and they stop Crawl, or I guess, what was it, Captain Edison? They stop him from using the bioweapon. He was going to unleash it through like the air supply system, if I remember correctly, and that's how he's going to destroy everyone on this base, and then kind of move on from there. After all that, they defeat him, and he gets destroyed by his own bioweapon. They decide that they want to go back out to space. Kirk turns down the Vice Admiral ship. Spock, who was, I guess, going to go off to Vulcan and start helping with rebuilding on New Vulcan. They're all going to stay on the ship and come back, and you see the new Enterprise being made, the Enterprise A, and it is the Enterprise A. You see the whole thing, you see the little A there next to the 1701. So now we have, the Enterprise A, and it looks the same as the last one, which, that's kind of how it was with the Enterprise A in the original timeline. So that at least stays kind of true to character, but it was nice to see them come back into it, to see the A and see things kind of progressing. Though, for my sanity, I hope they don't go Star Trek V routes and make the malfunctioning ship part of the whole story in the next one. So, the Enterprise A flies out into space to continue their 5-year mission, or I guess maybe it starts over, I don't know. And after the credits are done, the initial credits anyway, there is no scene, but there is some text. And it says, "In loving memory of Leonard Nimoy." And it says, "For Anton," after that. And, it's a very touching thing because that was 2 tragic losses for the franchise within the last, year or so. And that's still kind of an open wound for a lot of Star Trek fans was, the death of Leonard Nimoy. It's been about a year now, a little over a year. That we lost him. That's still a fresh wound for a lot of Trek fans. And then, losing Anton last month to that freak car accident. It's sad. It really is sad. You watch this and you get to that point and you kind of, that bit of reality sets in a little bit beyond, the movie itself. There's no more of the original Spock. We're not going to see Leonard Nimoy's name in a Star Trek thing ever again. And then to also think about the sad loss of a young actor who still had, a lot to offer and had a great role in this franchise and helped bring, a beloved character. Chekhov is still a very well-liked character in the Star Trek fan base, and he did a great job in making the role his own and giving its own little take on things. And it's sad to see that ended in such a way, in such a mindless way. It was just an accident. So there's a bit of tragedy behind the movie, and it kind of adds a bit of weird levity to the kind of action adventure that you go through in this, to kind of let reality a little bit set in after the fact. But that's the nature of life. The unknown and dealing through mortality. In fact, it was kind of a weird happenstance, that you you had the death of one of the actors in a movie where one of the characters is dealing with his own mortality, and their place in life, and living up to expectations. It's really a sad parallel to have to think about. That kind of went on a sad note, didn't it? But I mean, it's something I didn't want to ignore because I feel that would have been wrong to ignore it and not talk about it. So overall, at the very least, Anton had a good movie come out after his death. That at least there's a good memory of him for people to look at. And that was his time in the Star Trek franchise for sure. Was a highlight in his career, and I think helped define his acting a bit. And it's sad that we're not going to see him, reprise his character again. But the franchise will go on as it always has, and he's forever going to be a part of that. He made his mark. He made his place. And we're all grateful for it, I think. And I look forward to the next entry in this franchise. Like I said before, recommend this movie. Go see it. It's doing fantastic in the box office. And while it is far from a perfect movie, it's definitely one of the better movies you're going to see over the summer. It is definitely something that you should, when the time comes, add it to your Star Trek collection. This isn't something you have to be ashamed of enjoying. This is something you can go in and fully enjoy. Whether you want to enjoy the comedy, or the action, or the space fights, or anything like that. This is definitely something to go see. So, go do it. Stop watching me. Go do it. Have a good time. You won't regret it. And that's the end of the spoiler section. It's a bit shorter, and I didn't talk about as much as I had with other things. There was a lot less bad to talk about this movie, and that really helped me out. This is a really great palate cleanser after last week. That's all for the spoiler section for this Zandrous Reviews. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and then come back for the next video. So until then, my name is Zandrous, and as always, please remember, stay awesome. Till next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. If you did, don't forget to go check out the last episode of Zandrous Reviews, where I took a look at Ghostbusters 2016 along with my friend Sammy. You can check out both the spoiler and non-spoiler sections here. Or if you want to check out my last gameplay video at Zandrous Plays, you can watch the fourth part of Neko Power Volume 1 here. So go check them out. Have a good time.